We just got to see the reveal trailer for Total War Warhammer 3, and it's full of big and little surprises. We have confirmation of 4 different Chaos Demon varieties, the human nations of Kislev, and Grand Cathay as the 6 launch factions, along with some other interesting details. So let's jump in here and have a look around. So the most unexpected part of this trailer for me was right here at the end. What? They're adding the eastern lands of Grand Cathay, which is basically Warhammer's equivalent of China. And it's not only going to be on the map, they'll also be a playable faction at launch. Cathay has only had bits and scraps of lore before now, so Creative Assembly is working closely with Games Workshop to basically create an entire new faction. We're not really sure what they'll look or play like yet, but the province here called Gunpowder Road might give a little bit of a hint, as might the recent Total War 3 Kingdoms, though that was based on classical China, whereas the Warhammer fantasy world more often takes cues from the much later medieval age. But let's jump back to the beginning here to see who will be joining Cathay in their fight against Chaos. These are the cold lands of Kislev, which more or less stand in for Eastern Europe in the Warhammer fantasy universe. And it looks like they are straight up not having a good time. That's about what you'd expect here. Because of where they're positioned on the world map, they tend to be the first of the major human nations to bear the brunt of attacks from the Chaos Wastes. And that's exactly what's about to happen. And here we have Tsarina Katarina, Princess of Kislev. The narrator calling her my child would be her father, Tsar Boris, who's the leader of Kislev at this point in the lore, but he's ominously absent here, and we're not sure why yet. And here they are, the 4 main Chaos Gods, each of which will be getting its own playable faction in Warhammer 3. Nurgle is the Plague Father, and is all about decay and disease. Slaanesh is the Lord of Excess, and he's all about dark pleasures and temptations. His followers really like to use whips, and a lot of them would probably get your YouTube videos demonetized. Tzeentch, the Changer of Ways, is a big scary bird who's really good with magic. The most powerful Chaos Sorcerers serve him, and he's actually already got a representative in Total War Warhammer in the form of the Lord of Change who fights for the Warriors of Chaos faction. And finally, our boy Khorne! You've probably heard the battle cries, "Blood for the Blood God!" and "Skulls for the Skull Throne!" These are prayers to our big gory demon dad who loves nothing more than wanton slaughter, eviscerations, furniture made of bones, all that good stuff. We can see some Kislevite soldiers attending Katarina here. In the tabletop game, Kislev has gotten some models in the past, but they've never really been treated as a full faction like Empire or Greenskins. So a lot of these units will be brand new, developed in partnership between Creative Assembly and Games Workshop. The furry hats are, of course, a must. Kislev is inspired by medieval Poland, Russia, and Ukraine for the most part, and the influences are pretty clear. That's the moment we've all been waiting for. One of Kislev's signature units is Bear Cavalry. Their sigil is a bear, they ride bears, they really like bears. Personally, I can't wait to send these guys hurtling into a horde of goblins and watching the limbs fly. These winged lancers are inspired by the Polish winged hussars of medieval fame and glory, and they'll probably serve as a swift, deadly shock cavalry unit. Bears are awesome, but they're not as fast as horses. And we've got some Chaos Knights. The Warriors of Chaos faction already has some of these. But these ones are special. You can tell by the fancy helmets that they're servants of Khorne. The big red guy really likes fancy helmets, don't judge. And they seem to be mounted on juggernauts, demons of Khorne that are like giant hounds of amalgamated flesh and metal. A worthy match for our bear boys. These nasty little dudes are bloodletters. They're like Khorne's basic infantry, among the weakest of demons, but that's little consolation when they're cutting you in half with a flaming sword. And it's Katarina to the rescue. She has access to her own special school of magic, the Lore of Ice, which we haven't seen in Total War Warhammer yet. I imagine it'll probably be usable by Kislev's generic caster lords too. Things are about to get hairy though. That right there is a Bloodthirster, a greater demon of Khorne and one of the most deadly melee creatures in all of Warhammer Fantasy. It could probably take on this entire unit of infantry by itself and still be ready for more, but I think Katarina has other plans. So there we have it. Kislev and Cathay will be facing down the forces of Nurgle, Slaanesh, Tzeentch, and Khorne sometime later this year. Which faction are you most excited to play? For more on Total War and Warhammer, keep it locked right here on IGN.